So last video, I got a comment from a millennial who says that he's a washed up and he wasted his life. And while I disagree with the washed up part, because God sees us all as His children, and no matter where we are in life, He will always love us. I feel like I could use this comment to spread more wisdom to other people who watch my videos or anyone who passes by this video. Um, and obviously, I'm 21 years old, so I still have the rest of my 20s to live, and I have limited knowledge compared to someone who is in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who has lived their lives. But I still know, you know, a few things, including the things from this comment, which I'll use as the base of my video, on things that will ruin your life if you do not keep them in check, or ruin your 20s, which is the most important um, time in your life. Your 20s are the most important because every other decade after that has roots in your 20s. The habits that you build, the characteristics and the skills that you develop, all those things become like set in stone when you become 30, 40, 50. And obviously I have not lived that out because I'm only 21, but from the Bible and from other resources and elders, I've come to realize that. And if anything, it's a good thing I know this as a 21-year-old. That way I can avoid those mistakes. So, the first reason on how to ruin your life is, actually a reason I came up with, and it is pretty clear in the Bible, which is to ignore God and to put Him on hold. You could have everything that you ever wanted. You could build a successful career. You have all the money, all the girls in the world, but still be building on sand because you did not develop a relationship with God. Isaiah 41 verse 10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So if God, claims to be this almighty power who is here to strengthen you and help you along your way, and you leave Him on hold, then that's going to have significant impact in your life. So just ignoring God, not spending time with Him, could have negative effects in your life, because He's the one that strengthens you, who leads you, who gets you through the hardships. So without God, there's a high potential that you could croak under pressure. For me, all the things that I've been through so far, and I've been through a lot of serious things for my age. I would have croaked if it weren't for my relationship with God. So I already am living proof of this. I'm already super young, already. So yeah, definitely, if you haven't developed your relationship with God, or you don't believe in Him, or you've walked away from the church, that's number one. You got to get right with God before it's too late. And another reason for that is because life isn't guaranteed. Life could end in a snap of a fingers. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. You can't just wait till you're settled in to develop a relationship with God, because you're going to realize your life is never going to be comfortable. Like in your 20s you're busy finding out who you are and the career that you want to do with the rest of your life. 30s you're probably getting married and starting a family and have a permanent career. And then your 40s and 50s, the stake just gets higher because now you have way more responsibility in those years, which again is I still have to live that out to know the full picture of that. But from other elders and people who are older than me that I've talked to, it is a lot of responsibility, and that responsibility just grows and grows as you get older. It seems like, but yeah, but anyways, just you cannot wait on things. You gotta get right with God, instantly. Do not wait, because either you will run out of time physically to do it, because you could die at any time, or you will never do it if you don't take action. Amen. And Ecclesiastes 12 verse 1 says, remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come and the years draw near, when you say, I have no pleasure in them. So that verse, written by the most wisest man in the Bible, King Solomon, says that get right with God before your life gets even more chaotic. When you still have the freedom that you have in your 20s, because you'll soon realize that it's going to get harder to get right with God when you're swamped with responsibilities. It's harder to learn things when you're older. So if anything, it goes with anything. Start while you're young as soon as possible to learn anything. And the next point comes from the comment, and that is getting a worthless degree. If you go to college, you need to have a plan in place on why you're getting that degree. You can't just go into college and be like, oh, I'll figure it out after I graduate, or because my parents said to. Because I believe that's a waste of time and a waste of money, because you in university college is very expensive. Like I don't even know how I'm affording to pay it, even with my part-time job. It's like I gotta save. I can't spend any money, or else I'm not gonna have enough to pay tuition. So I'm in the middle of that. So like, just imagine like spending all that money and time for a degree that you're not even gonna use, or you don't even know the reason why you're even getting it. You gotta have a plan for that. If you don't have a plan for university, then go into a trade. Learn how to weld, learn how to fix electricity as an electrician, because those skills, those trades jobs will bring you way more value than getting a psychology degree, or a gender studies degree. I don't even know why that's a thing. It seems like a scam, but probably is. And then you're with this $20,000, $30,000 degree, and you're like, whoa, why the hell did I get this? It's just a piece of paper, and I'm not even going to use it for anything. So it'll save you a lot of time, effort, and worry and money, by not going to university unless you have a plan. In my own opinion, I go into university because I want to be a priest, and in order to be a priest, you have to get a bachelor's degree first. That's the first step. And if I discern that like I'm not called to be a priest, then I could always get a job in the geography industry. Because there's so many jobs related to geography that people don't even know of. Like GIS is a really big one, that people don't know of, but it's a really well-paying job. So there's a lot of avenues for me, even if I don't, if I discern out of the priesthood, which is very unlikely, because I've come so far. I wanna finish what I started and finish my plans. So, and the next reason on how to ruin your life is surround yourself with the wrong people. And the comment also says this. He says that he gave a lot of his time to friends and fun, because his youth is supposed to be enjoyed. But in the meantime, what he didn't know is that the world kept changing. The world started, the economy started changing. The government started to tighten its grip on its citizens, as we're seeing in present day. And before he knew it, he didn't develop any skills in time, and the friends that he did spend with were actually bringing him down. Which, again, the people that you hang out with it's more than just it's more than just like the company that you keep. It could affect you, directly by hanging out with bad people. Yeah, First Corinthians 15 verse 33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good manners or morals." And that verse directly says that, like, if you surround yourself with bad people, or people that aren't going anywhere with their lives or have no plan, to get better or to get closer to God, then you're going to become those people. What gets celebrated in the group, what is, what the different activities that you do in the group, what their belief system is, all those things, compound, and eventually you get that mindset, and the people who don't have anything going with their lives, they're gonna actually make sure that you don't go anywhere with your life, because misery loves company. So, they want you to not get anywhere because they aren't going anywhere. So they don't want to see other people succeed. It's kind of weird why that happens, but it's fact. So you gotta know the types of people that you hang around with, 100%. The last thing that I want to kind of add to this is, last point is, don't make sure you have a set of morals and you believe in something, because this world is filled of evil. Is filled of evil ideologies that, if you do not believe in something, you're going to get pulled away by something. By something, in this world is going to brainwash you, or it's going to lead you away. It's like the seeds that got spread onto the path, and the crows took those seeds away. Satan is going to take you away if you do not get right with God and believe in him, and believe in his word. Because someone who doesn't believe in anything is easily swayed. If you have a strong foundation in Jesus Christ, then you're not going to fornicate, you're not going to do heavy drinking, you're not going to do things that is sinful in God's eyes. But if you don't believe in anything, then you're going to just do whatever. And there will be times in life where those things will come up, like someone's interested in you and wants to like commit sexual immorality with you, or like you go to a bar and your friend wants to buy you a bunch of drinks, or you're surrounded by like drugs or something, someone brings in that into your friend group. So you're gonna have these opportunities, or these situations where you have to choose between light and darkness, and having a set of morals definitely helps with that. I've been in situations where like a vape is passed around in a friend group, and I have to politely decline, because I know that's not healthy to do. And yeah, and also taking care of your body is another point that relates to vaping, because again, the older you get, the more your body decline, the more health issues you get. And by preserving your body and treating it as your temple, as the Bible tells us, our body is our temple, you could limit the amount of health issues that you have in the future. And again, I'm only 21, so my wisdom is so far limited, but thanks to the elders and my elders and my priests and this comment on YouTube, I'm able to spread these subtle but major decisions that could really mess up your life or your trajectory if you do not take them wisely. And that's why I leave off with a Bible verse, 1 Peter 5 verse 8. Be alert and sober-minded. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. So, again, if you have to take one thing from this video, it's build build your relationship with God ASAP, because your enemy, the devil, is waiting for someone to devour and take away from God. And make sure it's not you. Make sure you stand on business, stand on principle. Peace out. I'll see you in the next video. Amen.